Hi, and welcome back to Tending Lambs. In my last video, we went over the question, how do I get my child to obey me without consequences? I laid out how for a gentle parenter, the ultimate goal of gentle parenting is not obedience, but willing cooperation. And how in the absence of willing cooperation, it's really important for us as the parents to remain calm and collected and to not be intimidated by the big emotions of our little ones. Now in this video, I'm going to be answering the question, how will my children learn that their actions have consequences without punishments? Many of us have great difficulty answering that question because our incentives for engaging in certain behaviors or avoiding others has been tainted from the very beginning. Our gut reaction says that by spanking or grounding or using other punishments, that's what our parents were using to teach us the consequences of our actions. And so that's our starting point for what it means to learn about consequences. You can see this really clearly in the way that most people talk about consequences and discipline. They use those words when what they often mean is punishments. You're probably familiar with this yourself, and once you understand the misnomer, you can't unhear it. People will tell their children, you get a consequence for that when you get home, when what they really mean is, I have to think up a punishment to give you before we get home. If your children are acting up, some very brave or very foolish person may ask you if you discipline your children at all. And what they really mean is, why aren't you spanking them? I can't tell you how many times I've heard, man, that kid just needs a good butt whooping. So you can see why for most people it's really difficult to make the transition over to the gentle parenting dark side, where consequences don't mean any kind of punishments at all. Trying to retrain your way of thinking is not easy, but it can be done. Consequences are easy enough to define, but much more difficult to accept as sufficient when it comes to disciplining your children. You take a hammer to a nail, the nail goes in the board. You call your friend picks up the phone. You learn Italian, you can now speak to Italians. These are all perfectly good examples of natural consequences. From a gentle parenter's perspective, all of us are learning that there are consequences to our actions from the very beginning. The scientist in all of us is experimenting and noticing things from the very beginning. A baby moves a certain way and it shows them that, hey, I can roll over. When they have pain in their gums, they start to bite something and realize, hey, that makes it feel a little better. As they begin to get a little older, their experimenting and their observations move from themselves outward into the relationships with the people around them, beginning with their parents. A baby may think, hey, if I smile at them, they smile back. If I cry a lot, they look worried. If I lean in for comfort, they wrap their arms around me, and so on and so on. These observations are never ending. But what happens when they get to a certain age is that people circumvent the natural consequences that have provided so much feedback up until this point and start implementing extra feedback, extra consequences, in order to manipulate and change the behavior of their little one much faster than a natural consequence would, or so most people think. I use the sandbox example here all the time. If little Johnny is throwing sand at his friends in the sandbox, they don't want to play with him anymore. That is a painful, natural consequence to his actions. He'll also likely need to be removed from the sandbox because throwing sand is not just annoying, but it could be dangerous. It could hurt one of his friends if he got it in someone's eyes, for example. That's something extra that you would implement, but it's a logical consequence to his actions. Both of these consequences relate directly to his behavior. If you spank in this moment, what you've done is added a completely artificial consequence into this moment that has nothing to do with what he's done. Instead of using the real consequences of his action in order to teach him why not to throw sand, you've taught him that if he throws sand, he gets hit. And the incentive for behavioral change has switched from a genuine sorrow that his friends don't want to play with him anymore to, if I do this, I'm going to get a spank. And that also sets the limit in the wrong place. Instead of, I don't like it when my friends don't want to be around me, and also, I don't like getting hurt either, the emphasis is on mom's reaction. Now he's much more likely to be aware of your anger rather than his friend's displeasure. And this further teaches him that his limit is when mom yells or gets angry. It's not in avoiding the injuring of his friendship. This clearly sets up really, really bad incentives, not only in his relationship with you, but in his future relationships as well. Being insensitive to proper boundaries because the consequences that have been instilled in him, the understanding of consequences from the time he was little, have not been, oh man, I've really hurt your feelings, but rather have gotten pushed to something more extreme, something that resembles a punishment. In training your child to view the irrelevant punishment as the consequence and not allowing the natural consequences to have their effect, you're training them to wait for ultimatums and punishments in future relationships, in place of having genuine empathy and changing their behavior before someone gets mad enough to fight back. So hopefully I have shed a little bit of light on how gentle parenters approach consequences. If you like what I have to say and you are interested in hearing more, don't forget to like and subscribe. Until next time.